Hello, everybody. This is your hearing examiner. I'm going to ask Isaac a question. Let's see. I think I found it out. I have my webcam ready, so let me get it out. Let me make this work here. See if it'll work. I haven't done the webcam in a while. Come on. I don't know. Here it goes. Here it goes. There we go. Excellent. Perfect. There we go.
Like 6 months since I've seen your face, Russell.
I know it's been a long time, and I also have to apologize that I'm unshaven. I had my electric razor was not cooperating this morning, so but oh well. I'm halfway to getting back to the office. In fact, I'm supposed to go into the office starting this afternoon with the rest of OGC. So all right. So we have the court reporter. Hello, thank you for being here. Looks like we have everybody here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go on the record. Let me see this. Let's go on the record, Madam Court Reporter, if you're ready. Okay, so we are here today in Commission Docket number 21-00127 UT. This is in the matter of Tularosa Communications Inc.'s petition for ETC designation. That's eligible telecommunications carrier designation. I guess I'll just go ahead and have, let's say we have both counsel for staff and for Tularosa are here, and the witness for staff and witness for Tularosa are here. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves for the record, and I will start with counsel for Tularosa.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Moffitt on behalf of Tularosa Communications, Inc. And just for the court reporter, I'm going to reference Tularosa as TCI, so it's not confusing. And I have with me my witness, Josh Bugh.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for the hearing today. My name is Josh Bugh, and I'm the general manager for Tularosa Basin Telephone Company and Tularosa Communications here in Tularosa, New Mexico.
Mr. Bagatko, you are muted.
Good morning, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear.
Yes.
All right. John Bagatko on behalf of the NMPRC Telecommunications Bureau staff, and I'm accompanied by our sole witness for this proceeding today, Mr. Brady Tollison. I would let Mr. Tollison say hello if he'd like, Mr. Tollison.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me loud and clear as well. I'm glad to be here this morning. My name is Brady Tollison, and I am a utilities economist with the Telecommunications Bureau of the New Mexico PRC.
Okay, excellent. It sounds like we have good audio for everybody. The video looks good. So I think we can go ahead and begin the proceeding as per the order for the procedures for this hearing that were agreed to by the parties. The parties have waived opening and closing statements, and so we'll get right into the examination of witnesses. Mr. Moffitt, if you could call your witness for Tularosa, we can start the examination.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. TCI calls Josh Bugh.
Mr. Bugh, would you raise your right hand for me, sir? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Bugh. For the record, can you just state your full name and your position at TCI?
Joshua Bugh, and I am the general manager of Tularosa Communications.
And TCI submitted a verified petition in this case that you verified. And I have submitted to all the parties I'll represent and to you, TCI's Exhibit 1, which is that verification, that verified petition. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and is TCI Exhibit 1 the verified petition that TCI submitted in this matter?
Yes, it is.
And can you turn to page 9 of that verified petition, please?
Yes.
Is page 9 your verification of the verified petition?
Yes, it is.
That's your signature?
Yes.
And do you have any changes or corrections to your verification or to the verified petition?
No, I do not.
And do you still maintain today that the statements contained in the verified petition are true and correct?
Yes.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I'll tender TCI's Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Are there any objections to moving that into evidence?
No objection, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
All right, TCI Exhibit 1 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Mr. Bugh, can I direct your attention to TCI's Exhibit 2?
Yes.
And in conjunction with the verified petition we just talked about, did you also submit direct testimony and exhibits to support the verified petition?
Yes, I did.
And is that direct testimony TCI's Exhibit 2 you have in front of you?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your direct testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I were to ask you the same questions today that were contained in your direct testimony, would your answers be the same as those that appear in that testimony?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I offer TCI's Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Are there any objections?
No objection.
Exhibit 2, TCI Exhibit 2 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Mr. Bugle, let's move on to TCI's Exhibit 3, which is labeled as your rebuttal testimony and exhibits. Now, did you offer this Exhibit 3, your rebuttal testimony and exhibits, in response to the direct testimony of staff's witness, Mr. Tolson?
Yes, I did.
And is TCI Exhibit 3 your rebuttal testimony?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to it?
No, I do not.
And again, like I asked you earlier, if I were to ask you each of the questions contained in your rebuttal testimony, would your answers be the same as those that appear in that testimony?
Yes, they would.
Thank you. Mr. Hearing Examiner, I tender TCI's Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Are there any objections?
No objection, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Thank you.
All right, TCI's Exhibit 3 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I pass the witness.
Mr. Brigacco, do you have any questions for the witness?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, no cross-examination necessary for Mr. Bugh here today, but we thank him for his time and his participation in this case.
Excellent. Well, I have no questions myself. So, Mr. Bugh, you are off the stand, so to speak. There's a possibility there'll be follow-up questions for you after Mr. Tolson's testimony. Unlikely, but just stand by if you could do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so let's proceed with staff's witness.
Yes, Mr. Hearing Examiner, thank you. Staff would call Mr. Brady Tollison to the stand, please.
Mr. Tollison, would you raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Tollison. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fine. Well, we are here to get your direct testimony moved into evidence, if you would. And I have a couple questions for you in that regard. First of all, do you recollect filing some direct testimony in this case on or about September 24th, 2021?
Yes.
And is it true that I have provisionally marked your direct testimony as Staff Exhibit 1 and circulated it to the parties, including the hearing examiner in this proceeding?
That is correct.
Is it also true that you now have a copy in front of you of Staff Exhibit 1?
That is correct.
All right, Mr. Tolson, would you take a moment just to flip through that Staff Exhibit 1, your direct testimonies from September 24th, 2021, to make sure that it is a complete and accurate representation of what you filed back in September?
Yes, I can confirm that.
And is it correct, Mr. Tolson, that you don't have any corrections to make to this direct testimony as we sit here today in this public hearing?
That is correct. I don't have any corrections to make.
And then finally, Mr. Tolson, if you were asked today at this public hearing the same questions as what we see posed in your direct testimony, would your answers to those questions change or would they be the same?
No, my answers would stay the same.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tolson. And with that, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would move for admission of Mr. Tolson's direct testimony, provisionally marked as Staff Exhibit 1, into the evidentiary record of this case.
Are there any objections?
No objections.
All right. Staff Exhibit 1 is admitted into evidence.
And with that, and we don't have any more evidence to admit, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would tender Mr. Tolleson for cross-examination.
Mr. Moffett?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Just a couple of quick questions, Mr. Tolson. Your direct testimony indicated that TCI demonstrated its requested ETC designation was in the public interest, but that staff needed some additional information, including an example tariff and one or more maps, that kind of thing. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I did a request for an additional map and then just a few additional details.
And in response to your direct testimony, TCI submitted its rebuttal testimony and exhibits that we already talked about as TCI's Exhibit 3. Did the information that TCI provided in its rebuttal provide staff with the information it needed?
It did. It was very satisfactory and actually included a couple extra maps and more information. So it was a very good rebuttal.
Thank you. And having received the information that it needed, does staff now recommend that TCI's petition be approved?
Yes, staff does recommend the ETC designation be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Tolson. Nothing further.
All right. I have no questions for Mr. Tolson. So, Mr. Tolson, you're also off the stand, and it looks like we won't be having any more questions for either Mr. Buick or Mr. Tolson. It seems to me that we can conclude the testimony, and I can make some comments as to how this will proceed afterward. Does that sound okay to Mr. Bagatko?
That is very acceptable to staff. Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
Mr. Moffett?
Yes, sir. Acceptable. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so court reporter will still continue transcribing this. I'm going to make some comments that are go beyond the hearing itself. Basically, the evidentiary portion of this hearing is now closed. The testimony has been taken. I plan to proceed as I have in similar matters, which I think both Mr. Bagatko and Mr. Moffett are familiar with when it comes to these ETC designations, especially ones that involve, like this one, a broadband program issue as well, that I plan to go ahead and issue a recommended decision with that will approve the petition. Recommend to the commission that the petition be approved based on the fact that it's unopposed and otherwise satisfactory. I may present that to the commission next week. I have some other things to prepare for the next week's open meeting, but I'm going to shoot for that, which would mean that I would be getting an RD out tomorrow. So I would ask if the parties would waive exceptions to the RD based on the fact that it would be an RD approving the petition. Usually what I do allow in that case is that the parties could object to any particular language or any details that they feel I've gotten wrong or should be reworded, but otherwise exceptions are waived so that I could get it in front of the commission possibly next week. I can't promise it'll be next week, but and the other part of this RD would be for issuance of a variance from the, I'm going to recommend issuance of a variance from the portion of the SRUSF rule that requires that anyone who any carrier must be designated as an ETC by October 1st of this year to be eligible for next year. TCI got its petition in, nice and early. You may have seen what did happen to OSO Internet is that they submitted their ETC petition on September or something, so it was within a month of the deadline. So we did not decide. I did not recommend to the commission to allow that one for consideration in this year's applications, but I think this one should be considered. I'm going to recommend that to the commission in the RD so that there'll be a variance there. So with that, let me ask if Mr. Bagatko, Mr. Moffett would waive exceptions in that event. Mr. Bagatko.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, yes, staff can waive exceptions. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Moffett.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, TCI will waive the exceptions also. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, I don't have anything else. I'm trying to think and make sure I'm not forgetting something, but I don't have anything else. Otherwise, we could conclude this hearing. Mr. Bagacco, anything?
Only to make sure, Mr. Hearing Examiner, that you need everything that you might need for your RD. It sounds like you've been working on it already, but if you need anything further in terms of word versions or anything else, please don't hesitate to ask.
Oh, yes. I don't know if I have word versions of the exhibits. That would be helpful to the extent I do a little cut and paste. I think I may. If you have sent them to me, then I have them. I just don't recall if I have word versions, but I would ask counsel to send me word versions of the exhibits. I'll be, it helps a lot to do a quick RD. It's going to be a very brief RD as the other ones have in these ETC matters. So, but it would be helpful to have those word versions anyway, because it saves time. So, Mr. Moffett, Mr. Gacker, you have nothing else. So, with that, I will conclude this hearing, and I thank the court reporter. I thank Mr. Tolson and Mr. Bugh. I was almost going to pronounce that boy as a more kind of German pronunciation, but I thank Mr. Moffett and Mr. Bagacco for being here as well. Thank you, Isaac, for hosting. I had the technical know-how to host it, but I did not have the proper access. That was my only problem. So anyhow, thank you all, and the hearing is concluded.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Allison, do you need anything else from me?
I do not, but thank you for asking, Isaac.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
See ya.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
one.